Okay, good morning, everybody. Good to be with you today. Today we're beginning Module 2 of the course. The assigned reading for Module 2 is Chapter 2 of the Moral Choices book by Scott Ray. There's also an assigned video to watch. It's only about 7 minutes long. You can find that on Schoology. Go to the materials page, and then it's inside the folder that's marked assigned and suggested readings and videos. Sit down quietly and as uninterruptedly as possible. Since you're about to dive into Chapter 2, I've got to let you know about a mistake that you'll find in Chapter 2. It's a difficult mistake for me to understand. So, our author, Scott Ray, has far greater credentials in philosophy than I do. He's had a PhD in philosophy since about the time I was born. He's been teaching philosophy for basically my entire life. And he writes the philosophy textbooks. And maybe he's just so involved in more advanced level philosophy that he's forgotten some of the basics from his early days being educated. But when you read Chapter 2, he's going to give you little bios of different philosophers, and including Aristotle, who you might not realize, Aristotle is my guy. And in the Aristotle bio he gives you, this is pulled right from Moral Choices, he says, Aristotle assumed leadership in the Academy of Plato after Plato's forced suicide and remained there until 342 BC when he accepted the invitation to become the personal mentor for Alexander the Great. Well, Plato didn't commit suicide, died of old age. Plato's teacher Socrates committed suicide, but not Plato. And Aristotle didn't become the leader of Plato's academy. That's the whole Aristotle origin story. That when Plato died, they gave the academy to Plato's nephew instead of Aristotle. So he said, screw you guys, I'm going home. He taught Alexander the Great. Then he came back to Athens and opened up his own school across town to compete with Plato's academy. I understand why a 7th grader might make these mistakes. I don't understand why Dr. Ray made these simple mistakes. They don't really impact the ethical content of what he's writing, but you know, I asked Aristotle to look it over, and that's what he had to say. There's a little correction so that you're not made dumber by what you read this week. Fellow on the screen is Pope John Paul II. He was the Pope, that's the Bishop of Rome and the leader of the Catholic Church from 1978 to 2005. That was the second longest reign that anyone has had in that office. And he's one of the pivotal figures of the late 20th century. Every pope is famous because they're pope, and there's a billion Catholics out there, but he took his show on the road. He traveled all over the globe until he was too sick to do so, and long after he was too sick to safely do so, taking his message to every corner of the earth. He was a major advocate for human rights and for peace. He would intervene and help negotiate in times of war. He would pick up the phone himself and call governors in the United States when the governors were about to execute 18-year-olds with mental retardation and saying maybe you shouldn't do that, but we ain't got to listen to no pope, so he ain't freedom, and they'd ignore him. He had a major behind-the-scenes role to play in the peaceful collapse of the Soviet Union and the overthrow of global communism in the end of the 80s and the early 90s. So when he died in 2005, he's got some pretty big shoes to fill. So whoever's going to follow him has got some high expectations to live up to. At his funeral in 2005, this fella, Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger, who was one of the leading members of John Paul II's administration, was the one who said the funeral mass and preached at Pope John Paul's funeral. He would go on to be elected the next pope a week or two later. The eyes of the whole world are on him this day because he's got there are people from all over the world at this funeral. Every living American president at the time was sitting there in this funeral. And so Ratzinger used the funeral as an opportunity for him to diagnose what he thought was wrong with the world these days. And here's what he had to say. He says, how many winds of doctrine have we known in recent decades? How many ideological currents? How many ways of thinking? The small boat of the thought of many Christians has often been tossed about by these waves, flung from one extreme to the other, from Marxism to liberalism, even to libertinism, from collectivism to radical individualism, from atheism to a vague religious mysticism, from agnosticism to syncretism, and so forth. Every day, new sects, S-E-C-T-S, groups, every day new sects spring up, and what St. Paul said about human deception and trickery that strives to entice people into error comes true. Today, having a clear faith based on the creed of the church is labeled as fundamentalism, whereas relativism, that is, letting oneself be tossed here and there, carried about by every wind of doctrine, seems the only attitude that can cope with modern times. We are building a dictatorship of relativism that does not recognize anything as definitive and whose ultimate goal consists solely of one's own ego and desires. This is April 18th, 2005, so what he's diagnosing is the world that you were all born into. If you were born 2006, 2007, 2008, maybe some of the younger of you. And when he looks at your world, what he sees is nobody stands for anything. It's every man for himself, and we all just sort of, go with whatever our egos tell us and whatever we want, our own desires. What I want to know is, this is the world, this is your world. I was already 26 years old when he made this statement. So this is your world. This is your generation he's diagnosing. How well does that match with your experience? Do you recognize the picture that he paints of your world? He stands for anything. Everybody just does whatever they want. Only worried about their own desires. Is that your experience of this world? Steve, yep, that's what's going on. What do you guys think? Is that your world? Is he describing the world you live in? Oh, Louis said, it's a pretty relativistic answer.
Yeah.
Jada, what do you think? Is that your world? Yeah, it's a very relativistic answer. So, say more about that. Bernard.
I don't know. It's just... I don't know. I just think it's so-so. Not really down to... What did he say again?
You don't. So your generation doesn't recognize anything as definitive. There's no real truth, and your ultimate goal consists solely of your own ego and desires. Maybe not you, Bernard, but your generation.
Yeah, I guess. Because mainly you work to do what you kind of want to do, and it's like what you want. So that goes with desires. So, and then ego is just like to be better than someone in a way. So, yeah,
Nobody makes an effort today to be better than others.
You don't think so? You don't see people making an effort to better themselves or make the world around them better? Victoria.
Wouldn't be great, but wouldn't be a great amount, but some.
You and I are the only ones who spent more of our life before 2005 than after. So how do you feel about this? Is this your world? Nobody stands for anything?
I think if you compare to how it was back then at a certain time, and yeah, because I think people's values change, and also I'm gonna throw religion into this,
I mean, it is hope on the screen,
yeah,
so I have religion seems to be relevant.
So I think back then religion took more of an impact on people than today, I guess.
Okay.
And so that could be one of the factors that could change people's values if they were influenced by religion, even if they didn't really follow, because it just influenced more back then, I think.
It was right. What do you think?
I think yes and no, because everybody's different. So some people can be out for their own gain, but that's not everybody. Some people like look out for other people. They help the community, the environment. So it just depends on the person itself that you're talking about.
So I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think about this, but I'm going to tell you. And I don't mean to insult Ratzinger. I have respect for Ratzinger. I have some of his books on the shelf in my library. But when I look at y'all's generation, I don't see a generation that doesn't stand for anything and is selfish and only cares about its own desires. That's not how I would describe the generation that gave birth to the Black Lives Matter movement. That's not how I would describe a generation. One of the things I love about your generation is you seem to have a passion for adding seats to the table, for people that have been cast out and left out in society for years and years and years. Even, I'm not from the 1890s, I went to high school in the 1990s. And there were certain kinds of people that it was just still perfectly okay to mock and make fun of and not include. And certainly not to think of as if, you know, they had some sort of identity that deserved to be respected. I've seen all of that shift basically in this time period. Now, I do think that there is a lot of relativism. We'll explain what that means today. There's a lot of relativism in your generation. But I don't see the same sort of dictatorship, the sky is falling, earth is crumbling, that the future Pope Benedict seemed to diagnose. So the author of our text, Scott Ray, he's not going to quote Cardinal Ratzinger. They're both Christians, but Scott Ray comes from a different Christian tradition than Ratzinger does. But Scott Ray is going to sound a lot more like this. He's going to hold relativism, which we're covering today, as sort of the ultimate moral enemy, the ultimate wrong moral idea that needs to be overturned to make the world better. Because Ray is what we call a moral realist. So you've got the scientist, she's got a specimen under the microscope, okay? She looks at the specimen, let's say it's a specimen of a virus. She looks at the specimen and she says, this is COVID-19 on this slide. Well, she's either right or she's wrong, okay? If it is COVID-19, she's wrong, she's right. If it's influenza, if it's common cold, if it's AIDS, if it's any other virus or any other thing, she's wrong. For Scott Ray, moral claims work like that. They are either right or they are wrong. He's going to argue for a moral realism based on integrating three moral perspectives: utilitarianism, in no particular order. Utilitarianism, deontology, which is duty-based ethics, and virtue ethics. That's the tri-perspectival ethics that you're learning about in the reading and the video. That's Scott Ray's stance. So for him, morality is an issue of fact, of truth, and it's independent of our perception. If she looks on that slide and she said, this is AIDS and it's actually COVID-19, she's just wrong. The virus doesn't care what she thinks that it is simply is what it is. For Scott Ray, moral claims are like that. If you say it is right to do something and it happens to be wrong, then you are just wrong. There are moral truths not of our making. Moral claims that are true independently of what anyone, anywhere happens to think of them. So, what Ray's arguing for is an objective morality. Let's play with, and the alternative is a subjective morality. So let's play with those terms. I should have changed the names on the slides to update for this year. Some of my humanities alumni will have seen this before, okay? So Gavin thinks that pizza with pineapple and ranch dressing is the best pizza ever. Is he wrong?
That's so wrong.
That's
bro.
so wrong.
To like not be alive
My goodness.
Oh,
that's a real person who still goes to school here, and you on video just said, what? No, don't repeat it. Is he wrong?
Yes. He just go to jail.
I don't know.
Locked up in jail.
He needs to be locked up, bro. That's pineapple on pizza. For
With
one, that's already
ranch,
disgusting.
With
That's already
ranch.
disgusting. But
So we
ranch?
got a lot of moral realists in this room, at least when it comes to pineapple pizza. Even
said, I
is he
don't know.
wrong?
You're gonna be locked up with them.
Ooh, let's see what Eden says. Let's see what Eden says.
Yeah.
Is this the kind of question that somebody can be wrong about?
Not really, no.
When you say, no, all you're saying is, I don't like pineapple pizza.
Yeah.
But Gavin does. Gavin does.
Bernard does.
This is a,
Gavin
What?
needs
No, I
to
don't
try
like it.
some
I'm
new
just
pizza.
saying.
Gavin's weird.
Say what?
it's a subjective truth claim. Now here's why we call it subjective. You break down a sentence, okay, like sentence Thanos snapped his fingers. In that sentence, Thanos is the subject, fingers is the object. A subject is one who acts. A subjective claim is a claim where the truth or falsehood is to be found in the person making the claim, not in what the claim is being made. So if Gavin likes pineapple pizza and Greg clearly does not like pineapple pizza, the same claim can be true for somebody and false for the other person if it's a subjective claim. Rhea doesn't think ice is made of water. Is she wrong?
Go to jail.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go to jail.
Bunch of intolerant. How dare you pass judgment? Jada, how dare you force
She's
your
drinking
opinions
water.
on poor Rhea? How is she wrong? It's just what she thinks.
I understand that that's what she thinks, but
Go to jail.
it has been proven that
Like,
ice is made of water.
Yeah. So, ice is not water is an objective truth claim. In this case, a claim that is objectively wrong. What we're trying to figure out is whether claims about our behaviors, when we say you should do this, you should not do that. Like when I say Michael should sit up, is that an objective claim, or am I just saying I would like it if Michael sat up? Anytime we talk about should and shouldn't when it comes to our behaviors, what's expected, what's normal, what's abnormal, we're dealing in the territory of behavioral norms. And they come in 3 varieties. You'll see 4 here, but that's because this 4th one is really just a category, a subcategory of the 3rd. So the first kind is known as a folkway. Folkways are customs. They're often not even written down. They're just the way folks do things. Elijah, come join me.
Oh.
I don't know if you've seen this before.
Cut that on video.
Welcome, Elijah. Am I right? Am I right? Yeah, high five. High five.
Oh.
So, Elijah, shake my hand. Yeah, what are you experiencing right now? No, just shake my hand. What are you experiencing? How do you feel right now? Confused. Are you enjoying this moment? This is a comfortable moment? No. Why? Because in our culture, you shake your right hand and you give a little firmness. Not too much, but a little firmness to it. Now there's exceptions. The people with only one arm, they've only got a left hand. Nobody's learn to have a right hand, moron. Nobody says that. I hope they don't. So when I'm shaking hands wrong, shake my hand, Kenza. When I'm shaking my hands wrong, am I doing anything bad? Like, am I evil?
No.
Yes.
No, I'm just weird.
Yes, for making that uncomfortable situation.
I'm just weird. That's how folkways work. And folkways are different from culture to culture. So if I go to Japan and somebody bows to me and I stick my hand out and shake hands, you know, I haven't done anything bad, but I've done something weird. It's not normal because in Japan, bowing is the normal sign of respect. And in our culture, a handshake, a firm right hand handshake, is the normal sign of respect. Amore is a little stronger than a folkway. A moire is any time where we now have a right and a wrong attached to it. Notice how moire sounds like, it looks like more, it's pronounced moire. How it sounds like moral, right? So this is the territory of rules. And this treats laws as a separate category on the slide, but I usually present laws as just a strong version of mores. So, let's come back here.
Oh.
Oh my god.
Ralph and Zoraida. Ralph and Zoraida are wearing the same shirt. Ralph, did Zoraida call you this morning and see what you're going to wear so you can coordinate? She ain't got your number yet. You're going to see to it stays that way, right? I mean, come on. Shut up. Shut up. Why are Zoraida and Ralph? Elijah laughing at y'all like I didn't just pick on him too. Why are Zoraida and Ralph wearing the same shirt?
It's the uniform.
It's a uniform school. All right. So if Ralph came in here and he had on a multicolored sweater with like a unicorn on it, and he didn't have the Four Corners shirt on, and I cared, I could give him a detention, I could send him downstairs, and things like that, because he's violating a school rule. But if I were to call the police and say,
Whoa, that's
excuse me, 911, 911, I got a guy and he's not wearing a school uniform shirt. What are the police gonna do?
in jail.
You're not gonna respond.
I don't know.
Yeah, they're gonna hang up on me. I might get charged for frivolous use of 911, because he'd be violating a rule, but he wouldn't be violating a law. Now, if Ralph came in with that same multicolored sweater with the unicorn on it, and then he took that sweater off, and right as Anastasia walked into the room 20 minutes late, he wrapped the sweater around her throat and he squeezed until her head popped. Then he violated a law. And so laws are the strongest form of moral.
Why would you do that?
Taboos are those things. They might also be mores, or they might also be folkways. But they are the things that get a strong gut level reaction out of us. Okay? So if Anastasia didn't like that I picked on her when she walked in, so she hit me, well, she'd be violating a rule, a more. But none of you, I mean, you'd all be surprised, you'd be talking about it, but none of you would be like shaken to your core. If I didn't like that she didn't like that I picked on her, so I punched her, we'd be closer to taboo territory, because I have a responsibility to see to the safety of my students. So if I began to prey on them rather than protecting them, that would be a taboo. You know, couple of students have a fight in the hallway. That's violating a more, but nobody's shocked to the core. You know, somebody pushes a handicapped student down the stairs. That's a taboo. Microwaving babies is a taboo.
What'd you say?
Microwave
Like
baby.
child, like infants.
So let's take it for a spin. Ken, just keep the camera on the screen here for a minute.
Okay.
Let's see whether what we're about to witness here is folkways, mores, or taboos being violated.
Oh.
That's what happened.
Oh, I thought he was about to swing.
What the hell?
Okay. What is he doing?
Has he done anything illegal?
No.
No.
Has he done anything like evil?
No.
Kind of.
But he's done, it's pretty weird, right? So he's been violating what? Mores, folkways, or taboos?
Always.
Folkways. This one we already did. I did it live in person. These girls are dressed the same, and it's because of a more, but not a law. It's because of a school rule. So, who are my dog lovers? Who are my dog lovers here? The dog's not dead. His dog giving kisses. This is what dog kisses are like, right? Right? So your dog's giving him kisses, and you kiss him right back, same way, right?
What?
No. You lick the dog right back, right?
Hey, never mind.
I don't even
So-
let her lick my face.
So when Suey makes out with her dog,
Oh.
is
It's
that
right here. It's right here.
folkway, more, or taboo?
Taboo.
Is that a taboo?
That's a
Probably,
taboo.
probably taboo. Probably taboo.
I'll see your face.
Me, I know, maybe, I mean, some people may actually do that and they're not gonna admit it, so they're just like, well, it's perfectly normal, but I'm not gonna say it. Or, you know, so, okay, all right. Making out with the dog, that's a little over the top. I admit. So, instead, we'll talk about when you make out with your grandfather.
Oh.
So write it does that.
Alex does that.
Damn.
You know who really be doing that? Bernard. Bernard really be doing that.
Bernard.
Doing that, bro. Like I caught him one day.
So that feeling in your gut, right now, that's a sign, that's your signal that what you're dealing with is a taboo, okay? It's more than just a folkway. It probably is a folkway. In our culture, we don't make out with our grandfathers. Is it illegal? Is it even evil?
I feel like it should be.
I don't. It's not the kind of thing that I like to Google search, so I don't know. But like, if that's as far as it goes, maybe it's not even evil, but it still gives you that twist in your gut, does it not? That's a taboo. Guy stealing a TV.
That's racist.
What? That's
What
racist.
are you doing, Susie?
That's racist.
So Michaela's a racist. She said a more a folkway or a taboo. You see, that's why I believe in your generation, because for your generation, racism is taboo. That's why I disagreed with Ratzinger in the beginning. So Michaela, for once in your life, thank you for your racism. It helped me to make my point.
She just said, "What am I doing still?"
Racist.
You're the one who talks about stealing.
Racist.
Racism.
Okay.
Everybody think Republican is supposed to.
Oh my god. I
The,
promise you I'm not racist.
everybody's racist is also a feature of your generation too.
What?
But, you know, there are good and bad with everything. So, return to me, please. I run a tight ship around here. Folkways are subjective. Taboos are subjective. It's mores, the rules. Are they subjective or objective? That's what we're trying to find out. Scott Ray says they are objective, but relativists and emotivists say no. So, for an emotivist would say there is no fact content to a moral claim. So when Zoraida says, Zoraida, well first let me ask you, do you think it is good to rob a liquor store?
No.
Okay, so when Zoraida says it's bad to rob liquor stores, all that translates to is Zoraida feels bad about robbing liquor stores. For an ethical emotivist, that's all moral claims are. They're just sort of the should and should not, the good and evil is just a mask, and behind the mask is nothing but your emotions. So somebody could just as well feel good about robbing liquor stores, and that's why some people rob liquor stores. On the other side are a couple varieties of relativism. Relativists say moral claims can be true or false, but only in a limited sense. For a cultural relativist says that different cultures, different communities have different moral standards, and it's not possible to rightly judge that culture by this culture's moral standards. So if I come from a culture, well, here's how I usually introduce this in my humanities class. Many of you have taken it. If you haven't, we read a novel called Sophie's World. And there's a part in Sophie's World, Sophie's a 14-year-old girl, and we get to hear her thoughts a lot. And she starts thinking, she thinks, you know, when my grandma was a kid, women weren't allowed to be topless on the beach, but now they are. The book takes place in Norway. So when we first read that, every boy in the classroom was like, well, we got to move to Norway right now. But the discussion we then have is this. All right, in one culture, Norway 50 years ago, United States just about everywhere, still to this day, women are expected to wear a top on the beach. In Norway, where it's freezing cold, women are not expected to wear a top on the beach. Is one of them wrong?
No.
Or is it just, what's going on there, Greg? It's just that...
Like, no.
Basically, yes. I mean, that's basically how relativism translates. It's what works in one place doesn't necessarily have to work in another place. I then usually have a cartoon I put on the board. I didn't think to put it in here, but it has a woman in a bikini, and like an American blonde woman in a bikini, and a Middle Eastern woman in a full burqa that shows only her eyes, and both women are thinking, oh, that poor woman, how oppressed she is. Why does she let men force her to dress like that? And I ask, could it possibly be that just some standards work in some cultures and not in others? And that's cultural relativism. Individual relativism does the same thing on a much smaller scale. It just says that everybody's got their own standards, man. You do you. Luis, if you think something's wrong, all you got to do is not do it. If Kenza Samadi wants to do something that you think is wrong, it's none of your dang business. She can do her thing. You can do your thing, and Luis can do his thing. You know, let's all get along and stop judging each other. That's individual relativism. You can think of moral realism. That's the textbook's perspective. Moral realism would say that morality is like the law of gravity. The law of gravity was not invented, it was discovered. The law of gravity is what it is. If you disagree with gravity, too bad. You're just wrong. For Scott Ray and moral realists, morality is just a feature of reality, and it is our job to discern it, to find it, not our job to determine it or to make it up.
Listen, what if we think something's wrong, but we still gotta do it to get what we want?
Well, then that depends what ethical system you abide by. So like someone like Kant would say, well, you can't. Now, you physically can't, but you know, you're sinning or you're doing wrong every time you do that. Not everybody is Kant, but that's how Kant would answer that. Cultural relativists treat morality a lot like the rules of soccer. Nobody discovered the rules of soccer. They were made up. They were invented. And then they were embraced by a community. The biggest sports community in the world, because it's the biggest sport in the world. So when you're on the field playing soccer, anybody play soccer here? Whether team or just for fun? Maybe the only room this size in the school that doesn't have soccer players. All right. Let me ask, has anyone played soccer ever? Okay, thank you. So you're on the field playing soccer, you follow the rules. The rules are real for the game. But then Steve comes in, and Steve plays American football. And so Steve runs onto the field during your soccer game, and he starts playing by the rules of American football in the middle of the soccer game.
Starts tackling people.
He starts tackling people, yeah, and picking up the ball. Well, he's wrong in the context of the soccer game because he's bringing a different set of rules which is parallel to a different culture for the moment. But then Steve goes back to his American football game, does everything he was doing in the middle of your soccer game, and now he's not ruining the game. He's winning it. Cultural relativism treats morality like that. Individual relativism. It would be like the guy who says, okay, maybe it's a New Year's resolution. every morning when I wake up, I'm gonna do 50 push-ups. I make that rule for myself. You see, you know, I do 500 a day, as you can tell. I make that rule for myself.
6 days a week.
If Anastasia's got that rule for herself, is Amanda wrong for not doing 50 push-ups in the morning?
No.
No, because it's only Anastasia's rule. For an individual relativist, that's what moral claims are like. All moral claims are like that. So I was going to play a video, but we're not gonna. This is Ruth Benedict. She's an anthropologist and a major advocate for relativism. Instead of playing the video, I've posted her article as a suggested reading on Schoology for you. Since we're going to hear so much about what's wrong with relativism from Scott Ray, I want to ask, what do you think the strengths of relativism are? This, by the way, this is a more obscure character from Marvel Comics. I chose him because his superhero name is Strong Guy. This is a Strong Guy.
What a great name.
From, yeah, isn't it awesome? From Marvel Comics. What do you think some of the strengths of relativism are?
Basically, gonna looks like you. Yeah.
Strengths of relativism, what do you think?
It relates.
So remember, relativism is it's either not my place to judge how your culture does things, or it's not my place as an individual to judge how you do things. What are some strengths of that? Or is everybody a hardcore realist?
That I can believe in my own stuff and I don't need to say if it's right or wrong.
Yeah, so it's more liberating. It takes away the pretense of I know better than you about your own life. You know, that can feel very bad to have someone treat us like that. What are the strengths of relativism? Victoria, old lady for now.
Your mom.
My mom. Thank you, it's very helpful. Louise, the strength of relativism.
I don't know.
You don't know? That's a very relativist answer. I don't know. So whatever you think the strengths of relativism are. Amanda, giggling here, coming to class 45 minutes late. What's
I
what's
was
the...
taking my senior picture.
Oh, okay, that's really important. That's super important. Strengths of relativism, what do you think?
No idea.
No idea. Well, here's some that I picked out. One is it matches the reality of cultural diversity. It is a fact that different cultures have different standards. And it's a fact that even within a single classroom, look, there's going to be a lot of overlap. A lot of us are going to agree on a lot of things. But there are going to be 30 different codes of morality in this room. So relativism matches what we actually experience on the ground. Relativism avoids the mistake of trying to transform is into ought. Moral realism wants to say that right and wrong are features of nature, that it simply is right and it is wrong. But is doesn't very easily fit into the clothing of ought. It is the fact that teeth rot. Doesn't mean teeth ought to rot. It is the fact that babies get cancer. It doesn't mean that babies ought to get cancer. Relativism avoids this dilemma. It promotes humility, discourages false certainty. I don't get to judge Anastasia or Jada or Yaneli or Yanelise. And they don't get to judge me for never remember which one's which, because their names are only one letter apart. Because hey, that's just me. You do you. Hey, you want to know your own name? That's great. I don't have to. It keeps us from passing judgment on other people and imagining that my way is right and your way is wrong. A lot of suffering happens when people do it, imposing their will on other people. It enables open communication between cultures. If I think your culture is less than mine, how meaningful a relationship are we going to have? You know, it'll never be a real friendship. It'll never be a real partnership. It'll never be a real dialogue between equals. And it takes the actual lived experience of people and it puts that back at the center of the moral conversation. You know, somebody like Kant who says, you cannot lie no matter what. I don't care if it's the Nazis. You cannot lie because that's the rule. Or like the Deuteronomist from the Old Testament who says, if your son backtalks you, you kill him. Neither of those really match the actual lived experience of what it's like to be a person. Relativism does that, because relativism takes what is your background, what are your experiences, and that puts it front and center in the conversation. So, have I convinced you all? Have I made you all relativists? Good answer. So, here's what I'm going to close with. Well, just a couple minutes on this, we'll be done for the day. There's a protest very, very early 1970s. I know the picture's really blurry, but you've got one group and they're protesting nuclear weapons. And the other group has a sign that says sexual freedom for all. Right? So it's a group that was more than 50 years ago, and they're tired of being mistreated because of their sexuality. Probably a lot of people look at that and say, doesn't sound like a good message, Victoria? Sexual freedom for all. You know, who are we to treat people as less just because of their sexual orientation? Right? And so that's a healthy relativist response. I covered part of the sign. They're marching for the North American Man-Boy Love Association, which is a pedophile rights advocacy group. They're marching for the right to be allowed to molest children.
Whoa!
There was a cultural moment in the early 1970s where the intelligentsia, the academics in society were starting to ask the question. They were just beginning to listen to the rights claims of other sexual minorities. And there was a moment in the 70s when they were like, maybe pedophiles have a real claim here. Maybe we should stop.
That's
Maybe
crazy.
So,
I think chasing after children is a real
no,
claim.
no. So, notice, a minute ago, everybody was like, well, yeah, that's just, everybody's got their own standards.
I never
and
agreed.
It's not my place to judge. And all of a sudden, we're all saying, it is my place to judge. I don't give a damn what your standards are or what your culture says. Some things are just wrong. Right is right and wrong is wrong. What I hope this course will accomplish for you, if you really dive into it, we'll have fun, but also take the intellectual part of it seriously. What I hope this course will accomplish for you is help us to start making those two voices in our head from 2 minutes ago and from now line up, right? Because a lot of us just realize that some of our moral thinking isn't consistent with other pieces of our moral thinking. Let's see what we can do to knock them in line. And that's all I need from you for today. Ken, my man, best cameraman ever.
There you go, you send it.